And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads. This is the opposition. And yes, this is the Antichrist. You will see a little bit of a difference on how the author describes the imagery in different parts of Scripture in the book of Revelation. Let's take a look real quick. In Revelation chapter 12, verse 3, it tells us, "And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads." In Revelation 13, verse 1, it tells us, "And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy." In Revelation 17, verse 3, it tells us, "So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns." The difference in all of these passages of Scripture is who the emphasis is on, who is being talked about. In Revelation chapter 13, verse 1, the emphasis is on the Antichrist. In Revelation 17, verse 3, the emphasis is on the judgment of the Antichrist. Revelation 17, verse 1 tells us, "And there came one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters." Now don't get me wrong, Satan is behind all of this. And those who worship the Antichrist and its teachings actually are worshiping Satan. In Revelation 13, verse 4, it tells us, "And they worshipped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him?" And here in Revelation chapter 12, verse 3, the emphasis is on Satan. This may help you when you run across the different word usage when reading other passages of Scripture in the book of Revelation. In Revelation chapter 12, verse 3, tells us, "And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads." To better understand this verse, all we have to do is go to Revelation chapter 17, and it will tell us exactly what the symbolism means. In Revelation 17, verse 9, it tells us, "And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains, on which the woman sitteth." In Revelation 17, verse 12, it tells us, "The 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but received power as kings 1 hour with the beast." This word crown here is different from the word crown that we saw earlier in Revelation chapter 12, verse 1, which was a Stephanos crown. This crown comes from Strong's number G1238, and it is a diadem, the blue band marked with white, with which Persian kings used to bind on the turban or tiara, the kingly ornament for the head. This crown is a crown of an earthly king or a world leader. So Revelation chapter 12, verse 3 begins to pinpoint the location in which the Antichrist will rise up to take its seat. Yes, in the context of the Scripture, it does describe the dragon as Satan. But we must remember, Satan does not show up to do his own bidding. He uses or sets up a power to do it for him. And in these different passages of Scripture, remember, the verbiage is slightly different, and all that just depends on who the emphasis is on. The dragon is Satan, who sets up a front man to worship, known to us today as the Antichrist. And in worshiping the Antichrist, we learn that we are actually worshiping Satan. That the 7 heads are 7 mountains. Mountains are governmental, political, or religious powers. The 10 horns represent 10 kings or kingdoms. that correspond to the 10 toes of Daniel, where 3 of them are uprooted. The 7 crowns are the 7 leaders of these 7 mountains. The Antichrist, who will create the hardship and opposition for God's people, will arise out of what we know today to be Europe.